As China continues to reignite its domestic economy after the COVID-19 outbreak, the trajectory of its growth is anyone's guess. The annual government work report is expected to refrain from setting a GDP growth target this year, the first time in decades. Yet the country is on track to further improve conditions for foreign investment, which could be welcome news for foreign businesses. All this against the backdrop of strong rhetoric against China and moves to further decouple between the world's two largest economies. I had the pleasure to speak to Jim Rogers, chairman of Rogers Holdings, to get his views on China's near-term economic prospects and those of Sino-US relations. Thank you very much, Jim Rogers, for speaking to us. It's been such a long time. Let me ask you, with China reopening its economy pretty much ahead of most part of the rest of the world, how do you look at China's business environment changing for foreign companies at this important juncture?
Well, everybody in the world is suffering, but China is the second largest economy in the world. You're opening sooner than anybody else. So right now, you're the most important economy in the world. America will come back and Europe will come back, but China's ahead of the rest of us, at least is opening up again.
In terms of business environment, in terms of foreign investment, what specifically do you think this means for people like you who are trying to invest, who are investing in the Chinese economy?
Well, I bought some Chinese shares this week. Who knows what it means for other people, but I have certainly started buying Chinese shares again. And as far as people building factories and things, everybody is hesitant right now, Lucien. Everybody is hesitant, so it will take a while to recover. Most of Europe is still closed down. Japan is just opening. America is just opening. So we cannot know until we have maybe in 3 months or something, we will have a better sense of what's happening. But right now, I mean, if the virus comes back, everybody will close again. So nobody can know.
But you just said you bought some Chinese shares. What made you decide to do that, to make that decision? Or were you pretty much buying in every markets anyway, just to hedge the risks?
No, I bought 3 markets recently. No, I bought some Chinese shares that are down. You know, some parts of the world economy are getting hurt very, very badly. Shipping, transportation, things like that. I bought a wine stock in China, we'll see.
You have also predicted that the COVID-19 recession will be temporary. Why do you believe so? Do you still believe that is the case? And if so, how long do you think it might take for production to recover to near pre-pandemic levels?
Well, there are 2 parts to this. First of all, the reason right now every country in the world is printing and spending and borrowing huge amounts of money. That has to go somewhere. It's going into the markets. It will go into the economy. So the economies will recover. A year or 2 from now, that may be different. And remember, Lucien, we have an election in America in November. So Washington is going to do everything it can to win the election. So people will start feeling better and the economy will get better for a while. After the election, you should be worried. I'm worried anyway, because who knows, all this money that's been borrowed is going to have a problem someday.
What do you think, is there anything that can be done at this moment to prevent that kind of a bad scenario from taking shape, or you really just have to wait and see, and there's nothing much that can be done about it, either in the part of the U.S. government? I guess the Trump administration will do everything to try to stay in power. Is there anything that can be done in any part of the world or in different sectors to make sure that at least the ride is a little bit smoother?
Well, they can continue to spend money, but that just makes it worse in the long term. I have 2 young daughters. This is not good for them. This is not good for young people, not good for old people, but it's certainly not good for young people. I don't see any way now, since we've opened Pandora's box, since we've opened this way, I don't see any way to avoid a recession in the future. But Lucien, we have always had recessions since the beginning of the world. There's nothing unusual about them. It's been over 10 years, the longest in American history since we had a recession. We're overdue. They borrowed all this money, spent all this money. I don't see any way to stop a recession in the future. But I want to repeat, Lucien, we've always had recessions. Nobody's ever been able to stop a recession in history.
So the question is how soon and how bad, to what degree? Because last time we talked, you were already predicting that the situation in 2019 was not going to look good. And it didn't really happen in a sense, but COVID-19 definitely triggered a different dynamic, let's say, to the situation. So what's your prediction now as to the next recession? How soon would it come and how bad will it be compared to previous ones such as 2008, 2009?
It's going to be worse than 2008 and 2009. In 2008, China had a lot of money saved for a rainy day, and they started spending their savings and helped save the world. But now even China has debt. Everybody has a lot of debt. I don't know who's left to save the world now. So I'm afraid the next time around, it's going to be the worst than any of us have ever experienced, because the debt is staggering now. Even China has debt, and you never had debt before.
Is there anything that you would want to tell governments across the Pacific Ocean to really cool down and coordinate their microeconomic policy, for instance, so that things, if the rain really comes, that it's not going to be so bad? Is there anything you think that can be done there, given the political atmosphere there?
The best thing that can be done for the whole world is to stop trade wars. Trade wars only make things worse. Mr. Trump thinks he can win a trade war, and he thinks trade wars are good, but history shows that trade wars are not good. So if I could give the world one piece of advice, it would be open the borders, open the markets, and don't have trade wars. It's going to be a problem either way, but if we have trade wars, it's going to be worse.
There are people who are talking about a partial economic disengagement or some kind of decoupling, which a lot of people argue have actually been happening over the past couple of years. How does that make things different compared to, based on what we're seeing, the economic sluggishness, the risks of a recession compounded by COVID-19?
Throughout history, we've had periods in history when people have opened up and the world has expanded its trade. We've also had periods when countries have closed off. Unfortunately, we're in a period now, entering a period now where countries are closing off. That is not good. History shows that is not good for all of us. The more closing, the worse. Everybody, China, America, Japan, everybody should be opening up as much as possible, because we're going to have a serious problem. Either way, the more open the economies and the markets are, the less bad it will be.
How about those hillbillies who have been said to have suffered from this openness that you promote?
Well, throughout history, that's the way the world works. You cannot change that. If one country turns out to be better at producing tractors than other countries, they should produce tractors, and the whole world is better off because they're better at it, they're better tractors, and they're cheaper tractors. That's the way the world economies work for a few thousand years. Yes, some people suffer, but then their country or their industry finds other ways to compete, and the world goes on.
Hopefully that's the case. Well, in terms of China-US relations post-COVID-19, what's your outlook? Does it depend on who wins the elections?
Well, between now and November, the Republican Party in the U.S. has stated more than once that their campaign is going to be based on bashing China. It's not good. I think it's a terrible policy. Nobody should be bad, but many politicians throughout history like to bash foreigners. You blame the problems on the foreigners. Everywhere they do this, Lucien, and that's what the Republicans are going to do. After the election, hopefully, somebody, whoever's elected, will realize this is not a good policy. Now let's go back and work together to bringing prosperity to both countries and to the whole world. But we have an election, and the Republicans have decided, let's bash the foreigners.
Unfortunately. Many thanks to Jim Rogers, as always. Jim Rogers, chairman of Rogers Holdings, joining us from Singapore.